Welcome to Plastic Model Mojo, a podcast dedicated to scale modeling, as well as the news and events around the hobby, where we hope to be informative and entertaining and help you keep your modeling mojo alive. We are back again for episode 72 of Plastic Model Mojo. Dave, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Well, we're getting used to this new recording platform, and I'll be A-okay, but I'm about a A- right now. It's not bad. And we're not alone tonight.
Hola, eh?
Hola, A. Our resident expat is here with us in the third chair. Jim Bates, what's happening?
Just got back from a show at a Hobby Town, USA, actually.
Really? How was that?
It was good. I'll talk about it in Model Sphere.
Well, let's just jump right into it, Jim. What's up in your model sphere?
Well, I just got back from a little Gundam show at a Hobby Town in Silverdale, Washington. And I was going out there to promote and try to attract more Gundams to our February show at the Museum of Flight. And there were some pretty impressive Gundams on the table, though I did not see one by Mike Basquiat.
Well, mine's not impressive anyway.
I would disagree, but yeah, they had probably 30, 50 models on the table, and there was some cool looking stuff there.
Did you get any takers for the Museum of Flight thing?
So one of the things that I was there for is we have an all Gundam hobby shop here in town, and I'm going to get it wrong. I think it's International Toy and Hobby, or it might be International Hobby. I think it's International Toy and Hobby in the International District of Seattle. And part of the reason was to meet up with the owner of that shop because he has a lot of Gundam customers, and I want to get him on board to help promote the show. And we're going to have two special displays at the show. One is going to be Black History Month, and the other is going to be the World of Gundam. So I'm trying to get a lot of Gundams out in order to just have a nice Gundam display.
That's a vibrant area of the hobby, man. That's doing
exactly why I want to do it.
You're doing good work. Be sure that you hand each of them an IPMS USA national registration form, too.
Hey, give me the forms. I'll hand them out.
You got it.
Tell you what you should do. You should give them a copy of not the current, but the last issue of Journal. It's got the Gundam on the front cover.
That's a good idea. I'll message Marie and see how many spares we've got. That's a great idea.
Yeah, Dave, if you could get me a dozen or so spares, that'd be awesome.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Mike. That's a great idea.
Well, Dave, you're welcome, but what's up in your model sphere?
Well, my model sphere is actually been fairly active. I've finished reading a book on Operation Ironclad, which was the invasion of Madagascar by the British versus the Vichy French forces that were left in place when France proper fell. And they kind of held Mers el-Kabir and the British attack on the French fleet. They kind of had hard feelings. So there was the British had to invade the island because they were afraid that the Japanese were going to seize it as a base and roam all over the Indian Ocean. So it's a really interesting book, well written, quick read. And Mike, you know from our discussions, I get a lot of my inspiration from reading history books. And I really enjoyed this one. There's a D.P. Casper decal sheet that I happen to own on Operation Ironclad. So reading the book got me to dig that back out, and I'm looking at some stuff. And the other thing in the model sphere related stuff is I'm doing a deep dive into markings of the Kates at Pearl Harbor. What I would have thought was a simple, straightforward piece of information is not that at all. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of confusion, and it motivated me to sit down and start jotting down some thoughts. I'm going to put them on the blog and probably on our Facebook page, and I might solicit some information in the dojo.
Well, that's a good segue into my model sphere.
And?
We've had some changes around here, Dave and Jim.
Yeah.
What kind of changes?
Well, one, we've launched a Facebook group called the Plastic Model Dojo, and that's been going fun for a couple days.
Oh, it's been extremely active.
It's pretty new for a couple of days. Now we're up to about 250-ish members now. That's not posse numbers yet, but we're getting there, Scott. The funniest thing was within the first 3-4 hours, we had about 4 modeling fluid posts and then a post on Jimmy Carter's pickup truck from by the old Revell kit.
You mean the Billy Carter?
Billy Carter, yes, Billy
Jimmy's
Carter. Jimmy's chagrin,
Yeah.
more or less. So that's been fun. We encourage everybody out there listening, if you have not already. I hope there's more people listening than that.
I was blown away by the guy who posted that there were models of the $6 Million Man fighting random animals. That was totally awesome. I'd never seen that before.
Well, we can hit that one again when we get to our special segment. So don't let me forget. But yes, another thing that struck me is a bit of a surprise. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but man, already a ton of sci-fi content, and this thing's only 2 days old.
Yep.
So I thought that was really interesting.
People, particularly ones who don't attend Wonderfest or the IPMS USA Nationals, I don't think realize how much science fiction is a growing area of the hobby.
And in addition to the dojo, we've also launched the 12-minute model sphere, which is a special segment dropped near the first of the month, each month, one time on our off week, to kind of highlight the upcoming episodes, get caught up with what's going on in the dojo, and maybe touch base with one of our regular guests or co-hosts. So Jim, get ready to appear on 12-minute model sphere in the not so distant future.
I don't know. Can you put 2 lawyers on something and keep it under 12 minutes?
We'll hook up shock collars. We'll get that done.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Ooh, can I control that from here? I wonder if Riverside will let me
no.
Which is the other third going on. We've switched recording platforms, and we're kind of teething our way through that. So bear with us, folks.
So, guys, I assume that given that we're recording an episode, that people have modeling fluid in front of them. Mike, what's your modeling fluid?
I don't know if I've had this one before on here. The High West Double Rye.
No, I don't believe you have.
Did I have the other rye or the Iowa bourbon maybe?
Somebody out there has to listen to all 72 past episodes and do a list of what Mike and I drink.
Well, this one would only have occurred in the last, since Nationals last.
I don't think you've done.
Episodes.
Yeah, I don't think you've done this one before.
High West Double Rye, a blend of straight rye whiskeys from Park City, Utah. Now, again, we were a bit put back by the generosity of our listeners at the 2022 IPMS Nationals, and we got so much generosity that we kind of lost track of who gave us what. Now, some of them I know by geography.
Right.
This one I can't figure out. I should know if you gifted Plastic Model Mojo a High West Double Rye. Please let me know so I can thank you profusely for it. We'll get caught up with that at the end, but that's what I'm drinking.
Okay. Jim, do you have a modeling fluid?
I do, but I'm going to disappoint you both. As I said, I just before recording got back from the show, and on my way back, I stopped. I talked to the Clown's Mouth, and I got a tea. And this brings up a story that sometimes Dave will call me, and I dread when he calls me and I'm in line at Starbucks, because one time when I ordered my tea, I often, if I'm going to see my paralegal, will also order a drink for her. One time I was just on my own. He shouted out "tall, flat, white," and they put it on my order.
And now if we're talking, he mutes me when he talks to the Clown's Mouth.
Oh, for sure.
So tea, not Long Island iced tea, not tea with anything in it. Tea.
Hot green tea, eh?
Oh, well, hey, good.
Welcome to Seattle.
Yeah, welcome to Seattle.
What about you, Dave? What do you got?
Well, I am drinking also a brown liqueur that we received in Omaha. Also, I don't remember who gave it to us. It is, and it's also a rye. It's a Templeton rye. It's a 4-year aged rye, 80 proof, and so far I'm enjoying it, which is kind of surprising because ryes are not my thing. But I'll give you a report at the end. But so far so good.
Well, maybe somebody will claim it. I remember it.
I remember. Please do if you were the person who.
Is it not from Michigan?
I don't have the bottle in front of me. I just know it's a
could be
Templeton
wrong.
rye.
All right. Well, we won't speculate.
Yeah. Somebody reach out.
Well, Dave, the mailbag has got a few things in it.
Good. That's good. Good news.
Little light by comparison, but still, this is a good amount. All right, up first, Jonathan Bryan. And Jonathan's from Croydon, England, and he's messaged us several times. His is a carpet monster listener mail.
Okay.
He was building. Well, it's a while back now. Gosh, almost 10 years. He was building Trumpeter's 48 scale Sukhoi 15 TM.
Mm-hmm.
Flagon G.
Yep. Have the kit.
And
except 72nd scale, of course.
Yeah. He lost a part that spans from forward of the cockpit to midway along the spine behind the cockpit. So no small piece.
Right.
Has no idea where he put it.
Well, of course, it fell into the carpet monster and was eaten.
Well, he must have some pretty deep carpet if it swallowed that part.
Yeah.
In 48 scale.
Yeah.
He says he couldn't find a place to put in a request for spare parts from Trumpeter. Probably wouldn't have done any good anyway.
Yes.
So he got on China's eBay equivalent, Taobao. Does that ring a bell?
I don't know.
Well, anyway, he found the Chinese version. Well, that's the Chinese version of eBay. He found a second kit, Flagon A, different kit, same basic airframe.
Right.
$20 for a replacement part, which really isn't bad.
No, that actually isn't bad, but it's frustrating. And what's more frustrating is as soon as the kit arrives from China, you find the part in the carpet monster.
Well, he didn't cop to that because he sent a picture of the finished model, but he is asking for a spare part E1 from Trumpeter Sukhoi 15 or a finished kit they're looking to throw away because he's got another kit he'd like to finish, but now it's missing the part. But.
Oh, okay. Well, if any listeners out there have that spare kit that they can part out, or they've stripped it for parts and they still have that part, get in touch with us. We'll reach out and see if we can hook him up.
Next is Steve Anderson. And I'm glad he spells this out for me. Matamita, Minnesota.
Matamita.
I'll have to Google map that one, figure out where that is. Steve used to be an M577 driver, which is the big tall box command version of the M113.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
He's wanting to build one when he was in service, which is a lot more contemporary to the Vietnam era, which is what the Tamiya kit represents.
Right. Yep.
And he's asking if anyone knows of another kit or aftermarket parts that focus on the exterior that might be available. I don't know. He's not real thrilled about scratching any of this or the interior for that matter. I did some poking around when I got this email, and there's a couple of German companies No, this isn't going to be the holy grail by any stretch of the imagination. A perfect scale model bow and MR model bow.
Mm-hmm.
Both those companies do some modern, kind of NATO Cold War era stuff.
Right.
But I don't know if they've got anything for this particular vehicle. They may have some upgrades for M113 that might be applicable to, the common features between the 13 and the 557.
557, yeah.
But I don't know. Really, there's no other kit. And if you didn't want to go the resin route, you might look at like Academy's M113 A3 and Tamiya's A2. Those might have parts you could cabbage to upgrade the exterior. I don't know. I'm not really familiar with this vehicle.
The other one that's out there is AFV did a upgrade of the Academy M113 with more interior too. I don't know how that would apply to the 577, but that's what that AFV club kit is.
Ooh, that could be useful if it's. I don't know how much they changed between marks, but
yeah, I have no idea.
It's an old vehicle, so I'm sure it changed.
Yep.
When I was a teenager, our National Guard used to have this day. They did this little mock battle, and then they had a small arms collection there. They would break out and let you look at and shoot blanks through some of them and stuff. But I rode in the back of an M113. There's lots of improvement there for creature comfort for sure. Go deaf in that thing.
Yes.
Kenneth Reed has written in for suggestions on manipulating metal cables. Now, again, this is from episode 71 and my lamenting trying to find the right cable for my catapult.
Right.
It's kind of a lot of things. It's some advice into that, a technique, and a goof, gaff, and blunder.
Well, give us the goof, gaff, and blunder.
Well, no, I got to back up all the way because he was trying to make a parking brake cable for, I assume, a model car. Maybe not. And he was using a guitar string. Now, he knows for my application, it's not the right texture, but the process would be the same if you're using metal. He heated this up to his red hot to anneal it.
Yep.
And then bent it the way he needed it. But the problem was he went to blow on it to cool it off. And he gave it a little kiss.
Ooh. Ouch.
So he branded this little horseshoe on his lip for a few weeks.
Bet that one was tough to explain.
I bet it was. You ever burned yourself, Jim?
Trying to think if I've ever burned myself in modeling. I don't think so. I think it's mostly stabbings and chopping skin open for the most part.
Yeah, that's probably the most common by far.
Yeah.
I still think that's a good way to bend the metal, but the problem I have with the metal is if you've got like a big sweeping bend in it already, that you just can't put enough tension in it to straighten it out.
Yeah.
If it's glued to a piece of plastic on the other end.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think this issue's coming to a close. So, I think it was BJ DeBecker of Panzer Concepts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he sent us a Facebook message, and he was mentioning it's another beating cord, but silk.
Yeah.
And I'd mentioned that I'd found some nylon upholstery thread that I thought was going to work, but the silk intrigues me because being natural, I think that might be. I think the nylon's going to be a little adverse to paint.
Yeah.
And I don't think the silk would be.
No, I think the silk would absorb it.
So I'm focusing in on it. I'm getting closer. Maybe I'll actually finish the model at some point.
Yeah. I'm sure all the listeners would be appreciative.
And me.
Yeah.
Ryan Mullins from Fulgham, Kentucky.
Where the heck is Fulgham?
I had to Google it. It is in the far west part of the state. It's southwest of Mayfield.
Oh, wow, that is.
Well, Ryan has got back into modeling recently and picked up the podcast, and he's chugging along with his first armor project. So, Fulgham, Kentucky.
All right.
Thanks for joining, Ryan.
I've been down in that area before. I've been in court in Mayfield before, but I've never passed through Fulgham.
Well, it's off the beaten path, I think.
It is indeed. Bob
Bear, the voice of Bob.
Always good to hear from the voice of Bob.
You discussed an email about people going from contest to contest, taking their models on a tour.
Yep.
I believe there's a band that also follows the same events. The Grateful Modeling Undead.
Oh, that's bad.
With their big hits, A Touch of Gray Polystyrene. Friend of the PE Devil.
Oh.
And trucking my 1/200th Yamato.
Bertha,
Okay.
she don't build no more.
When did this become a music podcast?
I was just going to say, you put me and Mike on, it becomes a music podcast, don't you think?
Yes. It's listening to you and Mike talk music is exactly like listening to you and Evan talk Mike and Evan talk Stugs.
Father Deacon Raphael Shelton from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, always hitting us every so often.
Yep.
He's offering some resources, digital resources for how to.
Remember that? Really? Yes. Yeah. Somebody wanted to know if there were modeling books in electronic format.
Well, he references On the Bench, episode 144. They were talking to publisher Kevin Futter, and KLP Publishing is all digital.
Yep.
Kalmbach actually has quite a few digital publications.
Oh, have they converted all of theirs to digital as well?
I don't. Quite a few in all. I don't know if that's the same thing, but
right.
He provides a link to that, which we'll put in the show notes.
I actually, you said there was a shout out in your last episode, I think so, or maybe 2 episodes ago, to the latest Fine Scale Modeler. And Fine Scale Modeler hasn't blown me away. They've started doing this digital download that you can also buy if you're not a subscriber. And I bought a couple of those, and they were pretty impressive. One of them, a couple of them had hurricanes in them, so that's why I bought them. But one had not only the fine scale digital download, but you got a whole copy of the Weathering magazine with it. So I got it on sale for like $4, and it was totally worth it.
He says AK also has digital stuff available through AK Interactive app on Apple and Android. And there's also various titles available for borrowing through archive.org. Now, I kind of looked at this real quick, and it looked kind of interesting. And actually, How to Build Dioramas by Shep Payne's on there.
That's a good book.
That sure is.
I mean, it may be dated as far as some of the products and stuff that we have now, but you talk about understanding the theory about what makes a good diorama.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You can't go wrong with Shep Payne.
It's interesting. A couple years ago, when I started getting to armor, I picked up the Shep Payne modeling armor books, and I got one of the original issue. And then after Shep passed, there was an updated one. And what I found really interesting is they're kind of the same books. Certainly, the updated one has a lot more of the modern stuff in it. But when they changed the drawings in a couple places from what obviously was hand-drawn to digital, they weren't as helpful. And I thought it was really interesting that they updated and had the nice, pretty-looking graphics, but the old line drawing actually gave more information. So I'm glad I bought both. It was nice to have the updated book, but with the old drawings in it.
Moving along. Here's one from your neck of the woods, Jim. Tim Nelson.
Hey, I know that guy. It's too tall.
Just right, Tim Nelson.
Hey, don't play into his propaganda.
Well, he was enjoying Steve Hustad's segment on our last episode, and he brings up 3D printed figures from a company called Reed, R-E-E-D Oak. Reed Oak, based in France. And we got a URL we'll forward along, but they've got figures in a lot of scales, but it's a 3D printed outfit, so they've got some pretty good figures that they can do in 72nd scale. So, and he's actually sent me a photograph where he's used a few of these. So we'll have to post those up somewhere. And if you're interested in small scale figures, particularly 72nd scale, you might want to check these out because they did look pretty good.
I've got one of them. I actually might have introduced him. I don't know, but I've got one, and it's amazing. It up until, and I got it maybe a year, 2 years ago, it was one of the most impressive 3D things I'd ever seen. Maybe the only complaint I would have is, much like me, it's probably a little rounder than people were in World War II. But it was beautifully printed.
And they have the most unusual business name for a 3D printed figure company, Reed Oak Rubber Composites, which doesn't at all sound like a 3D figure printing company, but they've got some really beautiful figures.
Yeah, they're really nicely done. They're not cheap, but they're really nicely done. I think I've joked with you guys, and I don't know if I've joked in public, that when you listen to the Posse or you listen to the Mojo, when you hear my name, you've got a drink. And that was totally eclipsed when Steve Husted said my name. That might be the most exciting thing that's happened to me in modeling ever.
Oh, Jim, I'll get you an autograph.
I don't want an autograph until he does his book I was trying to convince him to do.
I would buy a book from him all day long.
Heck, I'd buy multiple copies just to make sure it was successful. You know, like, yeah. I don't understand how he's such an amazing modeler and he's hardly published. He should have a book.
Yes, I agree.
Up next is Victor Carlson, and I believe he's from Sweden. We've talked to him before.
Yeah.
And using model tools for other things, magnifiers and X-Acto knives for removing wooden splinters. Now, I'm guilty of hillbilly surgery myself.
Yep.
Yes, stuff comes in handy, man.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
And in closing, from the email section of this listener mailbag, Michael Karnauka from New York City. Are there model companies that you flat out avoid due to past experiences? Dave cannot say Mach 2 or Fonderie Miniatures.
Dang!
Yeah, but Jim can say Mach 2.
The first two that come to my lips are Mach 2 and Fondle Me Miniatures. and having watched Scott Skippy King carve a BT1 out of the Vellome plastic that they maintain was a BT1, I don't completely avoid Vellome, but I think long and hard before I pull the trigger on a Vellome kit.
I have two. One is Mach 2, and the other one is Beechnut. Now, it's moot because they don't exist anymore, but those were some scary short-run kits.
Yes, those were awful. Mike, what about in your sphere?
In the 35th scale armor sphere, it would be anything from Italeri that was made after, probably into the 90s, like 1994, 1992. After that,
yeah,
when he started turning out the Panthers and the Tigers and the Jagd Panthers and all those really, really not so great kits. That'd be mine.
You know what surprises me you didn't say? Alan.
I would expect less of them, so I would accept more.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I understand. You're saying that it's not a hard no.
It's not a hard no.
See, that's and I hate to break Michael's rule, but with Mach 2, it is a hard no.
Was there anything on Messenger this past 2 weeks?
As a matter of fact, there were several. The first one I want to mention is when we got back from the IPMS Nationals, I, on our Facebook page, offered the 48th scale convention decals to the first person who responded, and Simon Lovat from Australia was the first person to respond, or as I call him, Lord Lovat. I just want him to know I haven't forgotten him. Your decals will be mailed out. Life has just intervened, and August has been particularly busy. A listener, Paul Toutant, reached out to compliment me on the fact that, unlike Dave Goldfinch, I apparently can pronounce people's names. Now, he thought it was because I knew French, which I do not. It's just that in high school, I went to school with a person with that last name, so I learned to pronounce it. So, hey, as long as I'm getting compliments on my pronunciations instead of corrections, I'll take that any day of the week. And finally, Rod Kuntz reached out and asked a question, which is he's planning to go to the Nats next year. And his question was, do I have to enter my model on the first day of the convention in order to get it in the contest? The answer to that question is no. You have until Friday. The cutoff is a little bit different for each convention. They all set their own cutoff, but it is Friday sometime in the afternoon to get your model entered, because judging happens starting at 6 or 7 o'clock on Friday night. And all the models at a national are judged between 6 or 7 and midnight, 1 or 2, or however late they have to go on Friday night. So you don't have to get there and get your model entered on the first day of the convention, which is Wednesday afternoon. You can get there whenever you want, as long as you get there by Friday afternoon and get your model entered by Friday afternoon. You're still going to be able to participate.
Well, that's it for listener mail.
Keep those messages coming. Email us at plasticmodelmojo@gmail.com, or reach out via Facebook. If you're a person who does Facebook, you can DM us on Facebook. And additionally, now that we've got the Plastic Model Dojo Facebook group, you can reach out to us there. You can not only post your model, but you can crowdsource answers to questions. We've got, as Mike said, 250 plus people participating, lots of really good modelers. And, don't be afraid to post there, and not only showing us finished builds and in-process stuff, but, if you've got a question, if you're stuck on something, crowdsource the answer. This is the point in the episode where I ask you, when you're done listening to this episode, if you haven't already done it, please go to whatever podcast app you're using and rate us. Please give us 5 stars. It helps drive up our visibility on whatever app you're using so that more people will find us. Additionally, if you wouldn't mind, I know we all know somebody who is a modeling friend who doesn't listen to this podcast. If you know somebody, please introduce them to our podcast. They may not listen to podcasts at all. You may have to show them how to do it, but we would appreciate it. It is the best way for us to continue to grow our listening audience. We continue to grow even after 2 years. I've got to be honest. Mike and I were both still surprised that 2+ years into this, we're still growing, and that's great. So do us the favor, if you like to listen, if you're enjoying what we do, you can thank us by going ahead and telling a friend.
In addition to our podcast, we encourage you to listen to the others out there. You can do so by going to modelpodcasts.com. That's a consortium website set up with the help of Stuart Clark from Scale Model Podcast. And you can go to modelpodcast.com and get a banner link to all the other podcasts out there in the model sphere who are participating. In addition to that, there's one other podcast we encourage you to check out. It's Modelers in Ukraine. It's a podcast put out by Chris Meddings, and it's all about the modelers and manufacturers in the Ukraine who are enduring this war and still managing to pump out some good product and content. In addition to the podcast, you can check out our blog and YouTube friends. We'd like to mention Inch High guy, Jeff Groves, the Inch High blog, all things 72nd scale. Chris Wallace, Model Airplane Maker, a great YouTube channel and blog you need to check out. And Sprue Pie with Frets with Stephen Lee. You want to check that one out as well. Lots of great content and commentary on the hobby from Stephen. And Jim, go ahead and plug your little YouTube channel there, sir.
Well, I have this character called A Scale Canadian who has his own TV show called A Scale Canadian TV. I'll be dropping one tomorrow night at some point. I also just set up a Scale Canadian Facebook page. I'm not sure why, but I was told to do it by Scott Gentry, and if Scott tells me to do something, I listen. And I've got a blog, which is also oddly A Scale Canadian. And there was a post today because I finished a model last night, which was oddly a Death Star from Star Wars, so more sci-fi. But really what I want to plug a little bit ahead of time is the 2023 Northwest Scale Modeler Show is going to be February 18 and 19 of 2023 at the Museum of Flight. We're going to celebrate Black History Month and have explore the exciting world of Gundam, and hopefully have 1,000+ models on display for a great weekend of modeling. So if you're in the Seattle area in February, try to dodge the rain and come on over to the Museum of Flight.
One last one that we should mention, YouTube's Panzermeister 36, our own Evan McCallum. Evan just dropped a YouTube episode in the last 24 hours on the detailed build of the new Ryefield Stug. So you always want to check Evan out and subscribe to his channel if you haven't done so already. Finally, if you're not a member of IPMS USA or IPMS Canada or IPMS Norway or whatever national chapter of IPMS covers the country that you're in, please consider joining IPMS USA, and all of the IPMS national organizations do a lot for modeling in their respective countries. So it would be a personal favor to me, and it would be something that I think ultimately you would find fulfilling if you would please join your national IPMS chapter.
Well, guys, let's take a break here and have a word from our sponsor, Model Paint Solutions. Plastic Model Mojo is now brought to you by Model Paint Solutions, your source for Harder Steenbeck airbrushes, David Union power tools, and laboratory-grade mixing, measuring, and storage tools for use with all your model paints, be they acrylic, enamels, or lacquers. Check them out at www.modelpaintsolutions.com. Well, guys, it's time for Come and Make It to Texas.
2023. Cannot wait to get to San Marcos, man.
August 2nd through the 5th, 2023, the IPMS National Convention in San Marcos, Texas. It is 332 days away from this event. Now, they're not doing a countdown, so maybe we need to stop. I don't know. I could go either way with that.
No, we need to continue to count down because if nothing else, it gets me motivated and excited. And besides, this is going to be the best birthday present for me that there ever was. My birthday's August 5th. That's going to be the last day of their convention.
Well, the real risk is at the front end of the convention, Dave.
Yeah.
Because that's somebody else's birthday.
Well, we're going to have to leave on my wife's birthday, and there are going to be some serious negotiations to accomplish that.
All right. Well, we warned the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
Apparently Jim didn't get the memo.
No, I totally spaced that Friday night was when we were supposed to look for hotels, and then it sold out. So I'll be somewhere else, I guess.
There are a lot of satellite hotels, so you.
Well, I've also got a couple offers for couches, so it's not the end of the world. But I was listening to On the Bench today, and nobody told me it was going to be 110. So I might just stay home because I'm not sure I could survive 110.
Oh, please.
It's not 110 the hotel.
Yeah, exactly. You don't go. It was hot in Omaha. Did we care? No. Why? Because we were inside the whole time.
That's not true. You made me walk to a restaurant and I almost died.
Oh, please.
But you didn't, Jim.
I didn't. It was close, though.
Well, we'll keep you guys informed with whatever else is coming up for this convention in the future. But for tonight, all we got is the primary window for room reservations has closed. It's a sellout. There are satellite hotels. They're fairly close, to be honest.
Yeah, they're all within a block or so. I mean, they are within walking distance.
And this Embassy Suites is not as big as the one in Omaha.
Right.
And there's no other adjoining hotel to the convention center. So kind of a losing proposition for them, I guess, to make everybody happy. But it's going to be fine, folks. Get a room and get to the show.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, we've been planning this episode for a while. At least I have. And I've encouraged you folks to think about it a little bit. The title is Waxing Nostalgic. And we just kind of wanted to poke around at the aspect of nostalgia in this hobby, whether it's our motivation for building, what it makes us build, the kind of memories it's built for us in our modeling journey. And then a little later, we've got a couple interviews we'll get to. But, for me, I'll start because I've got the mic right now.
Good idea. You're driving.
I really like the nostalgia aspect of this hobby. And I got started at a fairly young age with my dad. We built a Monogram B24 together. Then we built this big, 16th scale Revell 70s conversion van thing. Big, huge model, 12 scale or something. Big thing. We built that too. And then after that, it was all me. And I burned through about all of Monogram's 48 scale stuff and single engine anyway. And another thing I was doing was all the Airfix HO00 figures, not modeling, but collecting them all and creating these epic battles on the billiard table downstairs and all that. But still today, I find myself looking at these old kits and wanting to buy them. And I've bought a few, I must admit. The Airfix Bofors project was my kind of first nostalgia build, and I've racked up a couple more now that they're in the stash. But Dave, I know you don't like old kits, but something's got to be pull at your heartstrings a little bit.
Absolutely. I do. Oh, listen, my motto is life is too short to build old crappy kits. I am not going to go back and build a kit that I built when I was 13, 14, 15, because the odds are that kit has been replaced by a better kit. But that does not mean that I don't feel the nostalgia pull, the tug on the memory and the heartstrings when I see an older kit that I built when I was in my teens. In fact, I own a copy. The first 72nd scale aircraft kit that I built was the Revell PB4Y1, basically the Navy version of the Liberator, with working landing gear and flaps, mind you. I bought it on December 8th, 1973. And don't ask me why I remember that date, but I remember it as if it has been tattooed on my arm. And I actually own a shrink wrap in the box of that same kit in that same box, because the nostalgia was so strong for the memory of having, it's molded in blue plastic. And it's a white over blue scheme. And I painted the white and used the blue plastic as the blue. I mean, all of the stuff that we did as kids. And I remember that as if it was yesterday. And I don't know why. So I still feel the nostalgia. In general, though, I'm not going to build one of those kits because I'm not going to invest that time. I'm bad with, I am slow and I am bad with modern kits. And I know how much harder those older kits are. So, but yeah, no, I get the nostalgia.
Well, I have a little bit different experience just because I grew up in Canada. And one of the things that really strikes me oddly for you Americans was you grew up on these cheap Monogram kits. And the only time I ever really saw those kits was either at a specialist hobby show, because remember, they're imports from the USA, and or when I was in the USA on vacation or something. And in Canada, the monogram kits were pretty pricey. So up till 1986, I lived in Canada, and I grew up on Matchbox. Some Airfix. The first kit I ever built was a F-86 Saber Dog, and it was actually an MPC boxing of the Airfix kit. And I've got one of those in the collection here, but I absolutely love the purple range of Airfix kits, Matchbox kits, and built most of them as a kid. And what I find interesting about Matchbox is they spent a lot of time marketing two-color plastic. And nothing about that, even as a kid, attracted me. But the box art, the Roy Huxley box art, was unbelievable. Things like the Hawker Fury or the Lysander or the Dooley Bird Mustang, the Corsair, are still some of my favorite artwork. And in the 90s, I would, feel bad for all the Matchbox kits that didn't have homes that I saw at shows, and I would buy them. And I loved the box. I loved how they had the little window in the back. Everything was awesome. I love looking at the instruction sheets. And it took me a long time to realize, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Dave was right. There is no reason for me to own a Matchbox Spitfire or a Matchbox Zero or a Matchbox Corsair. And it's more just the packaging and just the memories. I'm never going to build these kits, so I got rid of a few of them. But on the other hand, there are still Matchbox kits that even to this day hold up. The Hawker Fury, the P-12, the Nordun Norseman, the Siskin. Those have never been better, quite honestly.
Yep. Privateer.
Well, I'm not going to say the Privateer is good. It has never been bettered, but that's not saying much for it. And it's interesting to me because I spend a lot of time wanting to be a nostalgia modeler and wanting, I sometimes say when I hear Dave talk about Steve Hustad as his modeling hero, I sometimes say mine is Mike Grant. He used to take these old Matchbox and Airfix kits and make them look awesome. And I always wanted to do that. And then I had this wake-up call of, one, this isn't fun. And two, I'm not that good. So I think what it's kind of come down to me is it's the draw of the box art. It's a draw of the packaging. I don't want to build these things. So my solution was a couple years ago, somebody did a golden age of Matchbox book. And I've called my Pittsburgh hookup and ordered one of those because I think I'm better off having a book with the box art to look at than having a box of Matchbox kits that I think I'm going to turn into something great someday, because those won't get built.
I make fun of Jim all the time. I pick on him, etc., etc. But I confess, when I walk by a table and I see the old MPC, what was it? The 3 silhouettes
profile series.
The profile series. Because a lot of what I built as a teenager, when I got into 72nd scale aircraft, the MPC profile series they were catnip for me. I mean, you got 3 separate sets of markings. There were 3 wildly different ways you could do the kit. And there is so much of my early modeling life that basically was formed around those kits. I'm not sure that I would be a 72nd scale aircraft modeler today were it not for all of those and the fact that they really were eye-catching and really, they marketed to my sweet spot. I do remember, as Jim mentioned, the Matchbox kits with the 2-color plastic, which I've got to confess, Jim is right. It never made sense to me, even as a teenager. But the little window, the little cellophane window in the back of the box, where you could actually see the sprues. I don't know who did that, but that was marketing genius.
What's interesting about that, and I only learned this later, that was not on the original Matchbox releases. The original Matchbox releases were in an actual box, not the open ending thing. But I love that. I think the other thing I loved about Matchbox, besides the amazing artwork, was you did get 2 decal choices, and they tended to do weird things like put Canadian markings in a lot of their kits. And Mike's already mentioned the Privateer. That included decals in it for a one-off Canadian transport version of the Privateer called the Rockcliffe Ice Wagon. And I just thought that was so cool. And it makes me wonder some days, did I become a modeler of Canadian subjects as a combination of being a Canadian and then buying all these Matchbox kits? And it's just, they were so cool. Now, what I don't get about nostalgia, and I'm going to tie this back to Matchbox in a second, is going older to the box scale kits. I never understood that. One of the things I loved about Matchbox is they were all constant scale to 72. And the one thing I didn't build a lot of, and I wish I had built more of, was the 76 scale armor. And apparently that, was it 4%? Made a big difference to me as a kid. I didn't love those as much. That being said, if there's anybody out in Mojovia who's got a Monty's Caravan they want to sell for too much money, ring me up. I always wanted one of those as a kid. Never got it. I will tell the funny story of one of the Matchbox kits I always wanted as a kid was the Victor, the tanker. And never could afford it. It was like $21, which seems like so much money. And one of the first things out of law school after getting a job, I went out and found a Matchbox Victor. And as an adult, it didn't live up to the expectations young Jim had of it.
Yes. Do you remember what the Matchbox mold maker was known as? Do you remember the nickname?
The Matchbox Trench Digger.
The Mad Trencher.
What's interesting about that is it's become such a trope, but to me, yes, Matchbox kits had terrible trenches. The problem was, like, some of them had raised panel lines. Like, I remember their P40 had these awful raised panel lines on the wings, and it would be like they glued 2x4s to the P40's wing. That's how bad these were. And I remember buying one of those at a show. You were probably there, Dave, telling me not to buy it. And loving the box art, and then opening the box as an adult and saying, man, why did I love these so much as a kid?
I do think a lot of the attraction of this, when you touch one of those kits, one of those boxes today, I think you're instantly transported back to the time that you built it as a teenager, when you were just gluing it together, painting it, decaling it, and finishing it in a day or two. And there was a joy to doing that. And I think that the attraction of kit collecting, where people buy these kits not to ever build them. I mean, there are kit collectors, and we'll interview a guy whose business relates to that, where there is a nostalgia for just the box and the parts, all never intended to be built. But I think that it brings back the joy that you had when you did build it as a much younger version of you.
Well, my Matchbox thing was not as a teenager, because by the time I was a teenager, I was living in the U.S. But my love of Matchbox was as a younger child. And I have a memory of the Brewster Buffalo. Now, we can go into the fact that this is the most loved plane by modelers that nobody in the real world loved.
Except the Finns. The Finns liked it.
My Uncle Ron, who kind of got me into modeling and aviation, gave me one for Easter, and I built it. It was pink and off-white were the two colors, and I remember building it and flying it around the house on Easter. And I have one of those. It is pink and off-white, and there's a part of me that wants to try to put it together in those colors, put the decals right on the plastic back like I did as a kid.
Can you figure out, most of the times the two colors that Matchbox used made some sort of sense, but with the Brewster Buffalo, pink and white made no sense to me, and I don't know why they did it.
Well, I've got a Siskin that's also in pink and white. I get the feeling that they started out doing the two-color thing as we'll try to do this, because I remember building their Zero that I think was green and orange plastic.
Yeah.
I think what happened is they started out saying, let's do this, and then they just started whatever was the cheapest, and that's what they threw in the hopper. Because some of the color choices made no sense. Now, some of their bigger kits, and I know the purple range was the little ones, but they'd often do a sprue in black, and that's with the propellers and the wheels. That made sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, pink and white for a Buffalo. Not sure what the molding machine was doing that day. Maybe the mold maker had a lunch where he enjoyed some hippie lettuce and came back and made a big mistake in what happened.
Now, Mike, you actually recently, at least semi-recently, actually built one of these older kits. I know from talking with you that you enjoyed the experience.
Oh, yeah, I enjoyed the heck out of it.
What particular joy did you get out of it? Because obviously it was a little more difficult than building a modern kit, right?
Oh, without doubt, it was that. But it was taking that same kit and building it to a level that I'm capable at now as an adult that actually met the expectation, the image in the mind's eye that I had as a kid when I tried to build it the first time.
So were you making the 13-year-old you happy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Without doubt.
The mind is an amazing thing. I mean, I do think that for a lot of modelers out there, particularly for these folks who do not really model, but they just collect the kits, they collect the boxes and the sprues and all. But even for modelers who build, I think that there is something primal in the back of your brain that making 13-year-old you happy brings a ridiculously out of proportion amount of joy to modern you.
Well, that's true. And I want to touch back on Jim was talking box art. And even as an adult, he liked the Airfix, or he liked the Matchbox stuff. I like the Airfix stuff. The Airfix stuff, for the most part, I don't know if it's all painted by the same guy, but a gentleman named Roy Cross painted most of it. And man, some of those are just absolutely brilliant. And what's amazing is this stuff was commercial art.
Yes.
But some of it was done to such a high fidelity. It's just amazing. And some of the early Revell stuff was as well.
Yeah.
There was some interesting artwork with the early Monogram, but I don't know. I think for the American manufacturers, Revell was knocking it out of the park, particularly in the 60s.
Well, I think what's interesting about both Roy Huxley and Mr. Cross was they drew you in. The action on these boxes was unbelievable. They did a good job of saying, this is what this airplane did and look how cool it is. And, we don't see that. I think some box art is getting better today. I think in the last few years, it's been interesting to see kind of box art return to much more prominence, especially Edward, I think, does this well, the new Airfix. But it was just something about the sense of action that both the Matchbox and the Roy Cross Airfix kits had that were unbelievable.
Well, I don't know if you all remember the 80s and 90s when companies, for, among other things, legal reasons, went away from box art and went toward photos of the actual built kit on their box tops.
Mm-hmm.
And the much less motivating aspect of the fact that there was a picture of the actual model rather than one of these artistic representations. I think it really hurt the hobby in that period because of the fact that they went to a photograph of the built-up version of the kit, and even sometimes they weren't that great. But even if they were good, they were not nearly as motivating as inspirational box art.
I would agree.
So, Dave, you have no interest in tackling one of those old kits and applying your modern learned skill to it?
If you and Jim jointly drag me into a nostalgia build, as long as the rules are wide enough to allow me to accommodate, my choices, I probably could get dragged into one. But again, it would not be. I have really zero interest in building an old kit to remind me of what I experienced when I was younger. I don't know. It's just the way my brain is built, where I love seeing the kits. I love touching the kits. I'll occasionally buy one and put it back. The Revell kit of the PB4Y1, I will tell you the box art on it is awesome, and I am convinced that it's one of the things that motivated me to buy and build what in modern, and by any modern understanding, is a crappy kit. Okay, just by any modern definition, I can go out and build a modern PB4Y1, and I would get much more enjoyment out of it than building the kit I have in the box art with the original boxing. But I understand the enjoyment that people get from it.
Dave, if you were to do that, say we did a build, would you pick something like the Norseman or the Twin Otter or the Privateer that's just never been kitted?
I think my motivations would partly be, I'll be honest with you, the Norseman is a prime example. I'll tell you another one that stands out to me is, you remember the Airfix blister packs?
Yeah.
They're just, those were brilliant marketing. Just absolutely. They were inexpensive. You could see the sprues. They had really good box art on the hanger. I have the Airfix 01, the bird dog from Vietnam. In 72nd scale, I really don't think that kit has been bettered. I could see myself doing something like that.
So, Dave, this is a little bit creepy. You said that. I was on the eBay a few nights ago. There is a new tool, L1901 from a Czech company.
I would have to look at it, but again, I could see myself building something like that. Right. Or better yet, do you remember, again, in the blister pack, the 02?
Yeah, the 02 is a good example because I don't think there's much better than that.
I don't think so.
And kind of like Mike, I'm going to try to do this sometime soon because I've got to build a Norseman for the Museum of Flight. We're doing a display. I forget what this display's on, but I think it's
is it American musicians who were killed by the British?
Yeah, so I'm going to do Glenn. That's exactly what it was. Thank you. It was just musicians, airplanes, and I want to do Glenn Miller. The new 72nd scale Cessna L19 is by a company called AVI Models, which is affiliated with Rising Decals.
Yes, I've seen that kit.
And I thought about buying one of those the other night, and then I said, I don't need more kits.
Well, some people can't get enough kits, and some people collect kits.
Yep.
And that seems odd to model makers, to builders of kits, scale modelers, who I think are, if they were honest with themselves, especially the stash holders,
guilty.
Yeah. It's a nuance of intent that separates a kit collector from a
stash holder.
A big stash holder, really,
Yep.
right? I think that's probably true. But some of these kits can get quite valuable, and it's really not unlike collecting anything else, really. I mean, as a model builder, like, well, why would you buy a kit and not build it? Well, why would you buy a board game and not play it? Why would you buy a toy and not play with it? It's just a different mindset, and it gets back into the nostalgia of things. But it's really, to your point, Dave, it's wrapped into the packaging and the marketing.
Yes,
and that's where that was the hook that brought in the fish, right?
Yep, absolutely. Well, and in regard to true kit collectors who do this not only because they have an interest in the box art and the nostalgia of it, but they actually are interested in the financial side of it. There are molds that no longer exist. The kits that have been built or then been molded and marketed, and that mold, for whatever reason, no longer exists, period. I mean, some of those things are in very high demand. We were talking about the plastic model dojo earlier, where somebody posted photographs of the kits of the $6 million man.
Yeah.
And I remember those kits. I absolutely remember those kits. I loved the TV show. Lee Majors actually later filmed a movie in Lexington. I really like those kits. I wonder if those molds even exist today.
That's a good question. I built one of them as a kid, but that was.
Did you really?
That was Michael Carnacco who posted those pictures. Yeah, I built the one where he's smashing through the wall.
Really?
Yeah, I had that one.
I did not have any of them. But
I love the $6 million man too. I had never even seen them till he posted them in the dojo the other day.
I remember the kits. I do. I mean, the TV show was phenomenally popular. Lee Majors was married to Farrah Fawcett for a time, who was, of course, extremely famous as well. I would love to know that if Atlantis or somebody has those molds today.
Well, we've got a segment here with a gentleman who actually lives right here in Lexington by happenstance. He runs a company called Old Model Kits, and he caters primarily to folks I would probably call kit collectors. People are certainly nostalgia based. So let's get into that interview and learn about that particular industry, because I think it's kind of unique to our mindset as scale modelers, these folks who might be more driven by the collectability of some of these old kits. Well, Dave, on this theme of nostalgia, a while back I discovered that there was someone right here in town running a business called Old Model Kits right here on my own back door. Alan Bussey, proprietor and president of Old Model Kits. Alan, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me here.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I'll add that in the time we've been conversing in getting this off the ground, you're actually a contributor to a magazine article published in the Air and Space Quarterly from the Smithsonian Institute Air and Space Museum, also dealing with old kits.
Yes. When it rains, it pours. You can go for a year without doing anything fun like that, and then it all happens at once.
Well, how about you give us a little bit of background about yourself and your interest in the hobby of whatever you got going on. I don't know if you're a builder or just a collector or just a wheeler dealer in old plastic. Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, I'll start back with my start into modeling then, I guess. My father, he modeled from the early to mid 40s. He started during World War II. He mainly built stick and tissue models from Comet, Gillows, and even an occasional monogram Speedy built, from what I understand. My dad could not wait to get me started building models. It's something that he always wanted to do with me. So when I was 4 years old, he comes home with this Lindbergh motorized pickup truck. All I remember is that it was blue and clear plastic. He assumed that I could read the instructions and put it together, and he gave me a tube of glue. And that was a big mistake. And after smearing glue over everything and having my first experience with the infamous Lindbergh kit motor failure, this model lingered on the dining room table for I don't know how long until thankfully and fortunately one day it simply vanished. And I'm sure it was in the trash because I destroyed this thing. So it was, but Dad's not one to give up. So it was very quickly replaced by Dad sitting next to me with a monogram Cessna 180 kit, patiently showing me how you build and how you paint. So the same lesson happened with a monogram Piper Tri-Pacer right after that. So after that, I was probably about 5 years old, and he just cut me loose. And if I wasn't shooting up things with a BB gun or riding my bicycle or reading about World War II military history, I was building a model kit. And I couldn't get enough kits. I wanted to build kits all the time. So I'd go out and I'd collect returnable pop bottles from construction sites and turn them in at the grocery store. And some of my friends, they would pity me and they'd ask me to either paint or paint and build their kits for them, which of course I gladly did. I'd do anything to work on a model kit. And even back then, I thought this was probably the greatest hobby that could ever exist. And I still feel that way today.
Alan, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 58, Dave.
Okay, I'm 61, and I remember back when bottles were returnable, I remember collecting the bottles and taking them up to the grocery store to get the money, then walk next door to the hobby shop to buy the kit.
Yes. And that's exactly how it went. The big bottles were 10 cents.
Yes.
The small bottles were 5 cents.
Yep.
As long as I didn't get distracted at the pharmacy that had a soda fountain, which was right in between the grocery store and the hobby shop, I'd make it down to the hobby shop and I could buy a kit.
And construction sites were the place to find empty, abandoned bottles.
Yes. And we lived in a booming town in Georgia. The town had just been founded. It was called Peachtree City, and it was very small. And they were usually building 40 or 50 homes at once. So it was just a great place to get money that way.
Yep. You and I had that common experience.
Is that down near Griffin, south of Atlanta?
It's about 45 minutes south of Atlanta, or at least it used to be.
Unless they moved it.
Unless they moved it, yeah.
Well, it's probably been absorbed by Atlanta by now.
Maybe.
Ooh, probably.
My wife was her uncle's a retired Delta pilot, and he lives in Griffin down there. And we went to Peachtree City for something, so I know it's not too far away. Well, how did you transform into Kid Alan, scrounging money, buying kits, building kits for your friends, and all that, into this whole niche of vintage kit, secondhand kits, and your business, old model kits?
I guess that is quite a reach to go from there to here.
Well, if there's something of substance in between there, that's not I got out of the hobby because of girls and cars. Go for it, but you can make the leap if you want.
Definitely. Well, but before I do, though, I'd like to say how fortunate I feel like that I am to be still a part of this hobby. I mean, when I was young, I always wanted to own a hobby shop. That was my dream. But never, ever, ever did I think that this could ever actually happen and I'd be dealing with model kits full time, especially the kits that I built when I was young or the ones that I saw and wanted but couldn't get. Old model kits has been a blessing for a lot of different reasons, but one of the most remarkable to me personally is that I'm grateful for all the loyal customers, and they, oddly enough, are grateful to me for providing this service. You don't get that very often where the customers tell you thank you. So personally, I don't think there could be a better business with better customers than this.
Well, that's pretty cool. And how long have you been doing this?
Well, I'll get back on track then. Thanks. When I graduated from college in 87, but peace had broken out with the Soviet Union and the aerospace industry was dead. So like 99% of my graduating class, I couldn't get a job in what my education was for. So we all got scattered to the wind, basically, and it started me on some interesting career paths. I ended up self-employed, and I always had a primary thing going, but I always had two things or hobbies going on the side. So one would be primary, two would be backups. So my hope was that the two things I would do on the side, one of them might lead to something better. So in 1996, secondhand model kits, i.e. the antique model kits that I had when I was young, that became one of my side hobbies. And I just thought it was wonderful reliving having these kits that I had before. But even better, there were kits I didn't know existed, which was probably 95% of the kits. So I started buying these up, and very quickly I ended up with duplicates. And then one day, a gentleman found out I was buying kits. He was from Chicago. He offered me 2,200 kits for $1,800. And I thought, well, I can't pass this up. So I run up to Chicago on a Sunday morning, get into town and get out before the traffic. And I get home and I have nowhere to put these 2,200 kits. And it struck me that I should probably get rid of some of these. And that's how everything got started.
Well, now, when you did this, were you still actively modeling at all?
Yes, but not as much as when I was younger.
Okay. Do you still to this day build?
Yes, I do build. Not as often as I'd like to, because the business is very demanding, about 70 hours a week, but I do still build.
Okay.
And because if you don't, it's kind of torture to be handling all these really cool kits and not getting to build anything. So I did begin, I bought things on eBay. That was one of the main ways that I would build my collection back in the late 1990s. But around 2000, things started to change on eBay. Kits would be advertised as never started and complete, but you would get the kit and it would be a highly started glue bomb that was missing half the parts. Sometimes a kit would be advertised factory sealed and it would show up and it would have a seal on it, but inside was nothing but sprue with no parts.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the kit never showed up at all. So some of my collector friends and I, we'd get together and we'd complain bitterly about the state of affairs and everything. And the idea began to hit me that, well, what would happen if you actually sold kits that you inventoried as complete and they were exactly as you described them? It's a crazy idea, but it just might work. So in 2003, I put up the first website, if you dare call it a website. It was an extremely crude affair. I was out on the road doing management consulting, and this thing didn't have a shopping cart and it didn't have pictures. But it's what I did in the evenings in the hotel because your entertainment's limited in the Marriott. And on weekends, I'd come home, I'd inventory new kits, I'd pack sold kits, and I'd run to the post office and mail them. Now, old model kits, or OMK, really came into being in 2006. A friend of mine who was a webmaster convinced me that I should have a real website with photographs and a shopping cart. So after getting past being offended about my horrible website, Old Model Kits was born. And he did a fantastic job. He's still responsible for the website today. And as time went on, much to our surprise, the business grew and grew. And my wife was a public school teacher, and that really wasn't what it used to be, even though she'd been doing it for 20 years. So she quit her full-time job first to do Old Model Kits full-time. And I was really tired of being on the road doing the consulting. And about 3 years later, I was able to quit my job and go full-time with OMK. So we have been full-time with this, both of us and another couple of part-time employees, for well over a decade now.
Now, as eBay became less and less a source of kits for you, did you just start buying more collections?
Yes. In about 2001, I decided I had to turn to buying all my kits another way.
So how did you find these collections to buy?
Well, other than the tremendous amount of work of going to shows and making contacts and getting to know people and handing out cards and flyers and all those other things, there's always auctions and estate sales and things like that. It's a lot of work to round up kits, and you spend quite a bit of time in total on it.
Looking through the article, there's at least two. Well, the other two guys who contributed in addition to yourself, Jeff Garrity of Rare Plane Detective is a fixture. We see him at the IPMS National Convention all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mustang Hobbies, I think. Jim Pentafalo, yeah. I'm a little familiar with him. I've bought something from him in the past, but buying collections. Do you still do the shows much at all?
I did the shows early on in the early 2000s, and there just isn't the market for the antique kits at the IPMS shows that there is online. So I do occasionally go to the shows like in Cincinnati and Columbus and in Indy just to buy.
That's what I was going to ask. If you're there as a buyer,
I will go just as a buyer, but I have not probably set up since 2004, 2005 at a show. It just honestly never worked out.
Louisville has a show on September 17th if you need a new hunting ground.
I have been to the Louisville show about 3 times, especially pre-COVID. And even though it's a small show, that's an excellent show.
I agree. And maybe that's how we became Facebook friends. I don't know.
It could be.
That's our host chapter.
Yes.
So we appreciate the compliments. Well, typically your customer base, what's that look like? Are most of them primarily collectors or builders or both? I'm sure there's a spectrum of guys who are just hardcore collectors that want the original box art with all the parts in good condition, like any collector of anything would want. And, to back up a little bit, you'll hear on, Dave and I are primarily builders, but let me finish here. There is a very, very nuanced difference between a kit collector and a builder. And it's this misconception of intent.
Yes. I intend to build every model in my stash.
Even though it's humanly impossible for Dave and 12 other people to get it done.
And therefore, Dave is not a collector in his own mind because he does intend on building them all.
Absolutely. Right. I do not collect old kits. In fact, I tend to get rid of old kits when a newer kit of the same subject comes out. So, at least in my own mind, I'm a builder, not a collector. But when I'm dead, my wife is probably going to be giving you a phone call.
So back to my question, where do most of your customers lie on this alleged spectrum of collectors to builders?
Well, I'm glad you guys brought up the difference, and you illustrated it far better than I could, because one thing I've discovered, it's insanely difficult to tell them apart. The actual number of pure collectors, people who are simply interested in the rarest kit, the best copy of the kit, the finest box art, the value, etc. And the people who are pure builders and who do not even have a kit stash, those numbers are very, very small from what I can tell. It seems that the vast majority, they say that they're builders, but of course, they become collectors by virtue of the fact that, well, this is out of production. I'd like to have 2 of them, one to build and one in case I mess the other one up.
Yep, that's right. You got to have a backup.
You got to have the backup. But I think whether we want to admit it or not, when we get over a certain number of kits, to which it would be impossible to build all of them, then we are a collector, even though we're not ever going to admit it.
Yeah.
And I do believe that that's the vast majority of the customers for me personally, although honestly, it's difficult to tell.
Well, it's that nuance of intent. I'm saying intent is the cobblestones to the road to hell.
Yep.
Absolutely. It's a great way to do it. It's a great way to put it. The intent. Yes, that's what it is.
Because that's the switch in the mind. Well, with these old kits, and kind of in keeping with the theme of our overall episode that this is going into, there's a lot of nostalgia in these old kits. And looking through this article, it's there at every turn of the page, just about. I printed this sucker out, and it printed it out in like 20-point font for some reason, so I got a lot of pages. But one of the big things that is mentioned, and with our third co-host in this episode we talked about a little earlier, is the box art. So what can you say about the draw of the nostalgia, the memories, the childhood memories, the reliving the childhood, and the box art, things like that?
Well, you nailed two of what I consider to be the big three. And when the big three combine, then that's what I call the magic about model kits that some of us have and some of us that are just builders don't have. Number one, box art. And this isn't in any particular order. Number one, box art. Number two, the joy of reliving something that was extremely pleasurable in your childhood. I'll give you my favorite example. A man writes in, he orders 4 Aurora Brooklyn kits, some of the most valuable. There was a Zero in there that was $850, an ME109. It was close to $2,000 worth of kits. And you know what he did? When he got them, he sat down at the kitchen table, he opened them up, he got out an entire tube of glue, and he slapped them all together exactly like he did when he was 6 years old. And he said it was the most fun he's ever had. So number 3 brings us to the smells. You've got the smell of glue and you've got the smell of paint. And if you're building stick and tissue, you've got the smell of the wood and the dope.
Yep.
Right.
So when you're sitting there looking at great box art and you're putting together something that you really enjoyed or wanted to really enjoy when you were young but couldn't get it, and you've got all the smells associated with it, I think that's pretty much nirvana.
Do you have some of your customers, particularly the purer kit collectors, who want not only a particular kit, but a particular boxing of a particular kit?
Yes, the boxing is a major part in the value. If we're to speak as pure collectors just for a moment, there is an investment side to it, okay? And so the value of things certainly depends upon the issue. And to take this to an extreme, there are certain collectors who want to have the box art. They want to own the original painting that Joe Catula did or Jim Cox did.
Right.
And that's a whole nother part of the hobby, but it's one that's pretty limited because there's only one of each painting.
Right.
Oh yeah. Well, if you're speaking of the original artwork.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen some of the Roy Cross paintings for Airfix go for big money.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're fabulous.
The other day, I got to lay my eyes on something I never thought that I would see. The original Joe Catula Aurora Merchant Raider Atlantis artwork.
Oh, I remember that kit.
You remember that? The rattlesnake
yeah.
of the ocean.
Yes, absolutely. I can see the box in my mind right now. That is amazing.
If I remember, the Atlantis has set 2 merchant ships afire that are out of range of her main guns. Has the word Atlantis on the bow because it is a disguised merchant raider and is firing a torpedo at yet a third ship and is probably making about 30 knots.
Yep. I got a question for you, and this is just purely curiosity. It means nothing. What would you say is the ratio of aircraft to cars to tanks to ships that you sell? What's most in demand?
Number 1 would have to be aircraft.
Okay.
Number 1 would have to be aircraft. And I'm going to give a qualified number 2 to tanks because I can never keep enough cars in stock. If I could keep enough cars in stock, they'd be number 2, but that's not going to happen. And ships are insanely popular, but have become extremely difficult to get because they're always made in lesser numbers than the aircraft.
Now, is the reason you can't keep cars in stock is you have car guys tend to want to buy these kits and build them? Would you say that most of your car sales are to actual builders rather than collectors?
Well, I'm going to answer that backwards. The actual problem is that I can't get the kits to start with.
Really?
Yeah, and now of course, we're talking about the older ones here.
Right. I understand.
Yeah, I just can't get them. And I honestly do not know whether there were that many fewer made than the aircraft kits, which are very plentiful. I can't answer that question. Or could it be that they did make as many car kits, but the car kits always tend to get built?
Yeah, I could see that.
Interesting.
Yeah, not that stops the car kit model builders from buying a built model that is a complete glue bomb that has 8 coats of paint on it. They will buy and restore anything to a perfect model. It's almost like automotive restoration.
Yeah.
What they do is amazing. We would never consider doing that with an airplane.
That is true.
Yeah.
They have a different mindset than other genres of modeling, and that's not to be a disparagement at all, but the model car crowd is unique among the scale modeling community, in my opinion.
It is, and I wish I could cater to them more by having more of what they want, but for some reason, I simply can't find the kits.
Well, speaking personally from these old kits, what are some of your favorites and your favorite kits or manufacturers, and kind of what drives you to be attracted to them particularly?
Well, in rural,
All of them.
yeah, that's a tough call. In rural Georgia, you can only get Monogram, Revell, and Aurora. And in my brain, there were no other model companies other than those 3. So I really liked Monogram. I liked Monogram because of the fit, the finish, the realistic appearance, and plenty of cool action features like folding wings and dropping bombs and retractable landing gear. My favorite Monogram kits, the SBD Dauntless, the Cessna 180, the Piper Tri-Pacer, the Phantom Mustang, and its modified mold son, the 132nd F51D action model. And my father bought me a Poacher 1/8 scale Rolls Royce in the summer of '74 that was on sale at half price. And so I spent 3 months building that. That became an all-time favorite.
That was an expensive kit even back in the day.
It was $400 at Grant's, and we'd go there after church and look at it longingly, knowing that we couldn't afford it. And when Grant's went out of business, Dad said, "Get in the car immediately." And we made a beeline to Grant's, and everything was half price, and we got it for $200.
That's a good dad right there.
I don't know if your dad's still around, but you need to call him up and thank him.
As a matter of fact, I did that yesterday.
Good for you. My father just passed this past April, and
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but tell him again every time you talk to him. Thank you for all that he did.
I do, because what he did was amazing, and in return, now I send him any kit that he wants, unless it's a really valuable kit.
Well, that leads into a question I was going to ask you. What is the white whale? What is the kit that is out there that you want to acquire, but you have yet to be able to find?
Oh, boy. I'm going to have to digress from plastic for just a moment to answer that question.
That's fine.
Okay. I've had a 1919 Ideal Model Aeroplane Company Curtiss NC4.
Okay.
But what I really want is some of Ideal's first kits from 1911. And I'd like to have some kits from the Wadding River Company, which was right before Ideal Airplane Company. I've collected the catalogs from these very first American aircraft modeling companies, and anything at all, even an empty box, is so incredibly rare for these things. And I only wish that I could get my hands on some of them. As far as plastic goes, I've just been extremely fortunate that in the 110, 120,000 model kits that have passed through here, I have not seen everything, but I've seen all the ones that I was really anxious to see. For example, there's a giant Aurora sailboat. I forget the name of it. I've only seen the instructions for it. I've never even seen it in a catalog. I've never had one of those. I'd like to have one of those. I'd like to have a Roby Atlantis, which is a remote control sailboat. But fortunately, a lot of the plastic ones, the Revell space station, the atomic power plants, the XSL01, the big Poacher cars, the big 1/16 Bondi cars. I've been fortunate enough to hold most of those and do the inventory on them and enjoy looking at them.
You just tickled the nostalgia button. The atomic power plant. I remember acquiring that kit. I remember building that kit right after my Boy Scout troop had toured an atomic power plant.
Wow.
This is in the 60s.
So that's what's wrong with you.
Oh, yeah, right. Radiation.
Complete with radioactive figures.
Oh, man.
No, I will share that perhaps the best, most interesting model kit that I've ever had, it was better than that 1919 NC4, is through a friend of mine who was very, very kind to me. I ended up with the Revell factory display model of the Arizona that was specially built for Mrs. Esther Ross, who christened the Arizona in 1915. And she went on to play a key role in the Arizona Memorial Committee. She went around the country giving speeches and fundraising for the existing memorial. And she always treasured that gift from Revell and kept it in remarkable condition. Brand new, 100% original, fully documented. And through nothing other than good luck that I probably did not deserve, I ended up with that model in the original box.
Oh, my.
That's amazing.
And just to sit there and think that that was hers and look at pictures of her christening the ship and reading about all the work that she did with the Memorial Committee, there's just a lot of history wrapped up in that piece.
That's amazing.
Well, 2 points I want to touch on. I don't know, looking at the article, if it came from your input or not, but maybe you can speak to them a little bit. The article quotes the fanciful box art of the 1950s came to an end at the beginning of the consumer protection era in the 1960s. That's a really interesting point. I didn't realize that. I wonder if you knew anything about that or not. Because I know like Revell and Monogram certainly switched late 60s into the 70s when I was buying kits in the 70s to photographic-based box art, if you can even call it art at that point, box illustrations, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then the other aspect of it is up until, well, fairly recently, I would even call it part of the demise of the American kit companies is that they were initially, well, they weren't initially marketed as toys. The marketing genius to sell as many as they did in the 50s and 60s was to market them as toys. Mm-hmm. And I think at this point, to a large degree, the fine scale modeling community is mostly an adult community, and most of the modern stuff is catered to more adult or more mature hobbyists. But originally, a lot of this was marketed toward kids as along the toy avenue, and they used toy distributors, and that was their whole marketing avenue. Their whole avenue into the market was through toy distributors and toy stores and that department stores and that sort of thing. But this tidbit about the 1960s and the Consumer Protection Agency changing the whole box art era, I guess, is kind of interesting. Do you know? Can you speak to that at all?
I cannot honestly say that I knew anything about that. I do know, though, that the box art from the 50s matured in the 60s, but it certainly didn't become significantly more realistic. I mean, we had all of Jack Linwood's work all through the 1960s with Revell. We had Monogram box art continued through with the blue boxes all through the 60s. Aurora continued with the box art. By the 70s, we had the Monogram blue boxes with the pictures of the built kits, but Revell and Aurora were still turning out box art. So,
Mike, I can actually speak to that. The article misstates it by about 20 years.
Okay.
that really came. In fact, you, Jim, and I were talking about this earlier in the episode. The Consumer Protection Agency, the model companies got spooked because the Consumer Protection Agency and consumer protection laws, a lot of those box arts of the 50s, 60s, and early to mid 70s were inspirational. In other words, they would show the aircraft in its situation, maybe with other aircraft, et cetera, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, all of these companies got spooked because the box art shows things that are not inside the box. In other words, other aircraft in the background, et cetera, et cetera. And I am convinced that is what that forced a lot of these American model companies to go to photographs. And that really did, in my opinion, contribute to the decline of American models in as far as demand goes, because when you look at photos of the models of Revell or Monogram compared to some of the beautiful artwork that Hasegawa had on the box covers of their kits, I mean, there was just no comparison as far as what really drove you to be attracted toward one as opposed to the other. This is your lesson. The lawyers always mess things up.
This may be a bad comparison, Dave, but I think you may have an excellent point there, because the hobby shops would stock the earliest model kits in America right after the war, like 1946, 47, 48, 49. But there was no colorful box art, and these things were completely unattractive. And while there were a lot of other factors that got people going, like the highway pioneers, primarily, not having good box art didn't help. And as soon as they figured that they needed to market these things, and as you were saying, especially to children, Mike, that had to make a big difference. So when they stopped doing that, why wouldn't that have an effect also?
Yep, absolutely. Frog and Airfix were, and to a lesser extent, Matchbox. I mean, their box art was what I think pulled in a generation, post-World War II generation of modelers.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Do you have, now I'm thinking in the vein of American Pickers, if you're familiar with that show, do you have an example of a really memorable vintage kit find or buy that you've done that you could describe to us? Or are you mostly simply buying from established collections right at this point currently?
I'm pretty much just buying from collections unless something else comes along, like a piece of original artwork or that factory model for Esther Ross of the Arizona. Pretty much it's just all collections right now. I can remember one of the most exciting things that I did come across, though, was a Kraft Bell X2.
I know that kit.
I don't know that kit.
It was rumored that there was only so many hundred made. I don't know the specific numbers, but they were incredibly rare, and it is the only one that I've ever seen.
Are you seeing more or fewer collections for sale? And conversely, are you seeing the demand side rising of late?
That's an extremely good question. Before COVID, the market was pretty strong. And during COVID, the selling market became about 30% stronger. It was all we could do to keep up. At one point, we went from having about 7,500 kits in stock on the shelves for sale down to 2,800. We just couldn't put kits on fast enough. Now, at the same time, about 6 months into COVID, everyone had had time sitting at home to declutter. And so the greatest kit sell-off that I've ever witnessed, now I've only been doing this 25 years, there's people who have done it longer, but the greatest kit sell-off I had ever seen began. And I was a little bit hesitant at first, but the demand stayed high. So I went ahead and continued to buy. Now that kit sell-off has accelerated, and I have no other excuse other than the economy.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's because of that. And some people are mentioning in the emails, I'm supplementing my income. I'm on a fixed income. I'm never going to build all these. I need to fix my roof. I need to sell some of these, things like that.
Sure.
The demand to purchase has dropped off slightly, which you would expect in this kind of economic climate.
Sure.
Now, is it way down? It's way down on eBay, which is a good thermometer. My friends that sell very, very heavily on eBay say there is a tremendous decrease in what they're getting for kits. I personally have begun to lower all my prices, which is what I did in the last 2 recessions.
Well, sounds like you got your pulse on the ups and downs, which is a good way to run a business.
Well, you'd think I would have learned something by now. We'll see how it works.
Well, I've actually met Jeff Garrity of Rare Plains Detectives. Back when he was located in Las Vegas, I happened to be out there for a convention. I went out to his warehouse and got to interact with him. Interestingly enough, while he models as a kid, he doesn't model at all anymore. This is just
really
purely a business for him. Now, how many other people are there? I mean, and I hate to say competitors, the other people in your market. How many really your size or larger old kit buyers and sellers who are doing it as a business are there?
Well, I considered myself friends with almost all of them at one point. There was a lot of them in different sizes. Of course, there's Jeff, there's Dean Sills, and there's Paul Malam up in Chicago, and just a whole host of other people. The majority of these have retired. My theory always was that there's a huge number of these kits out there, okay, and that there's no point in competing with anyone. If I would find out that someone had asked Dean or Jeff to quote a collection, I would refuse to quote the collection just out of respect for them. And as a matter of fact, if there were kits that I didn't want to buy at the moment because I just had too many, and I knew that Dean may have been interested in it, I would always send them to Dean.
Interesting. When we started this podcast, there were only 2 others, and now there's like what, Dave, 8?
At least.
And we all kind of have this rapport between us. And in fact, we have a kind of a consortium website that we list all the banners of all the websites on who choose to play with us in that fashion. So I understand that a lot. That kind of camaraderie is fun, and it's kind of spreads it around for everybody.
Well, life's too short for anything else, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's great. It's great if we can call and trade instruction sheets or decal sheets, or maybe even a rare part here and there, just to help somebody make something complete.
Now, do you separately deal in decal sheets? I mean, particularly aftermarket, or the only type of decal sheets you deal with, ones in a kit that are in a particular kit box that somebody might need or desire?
Due to time restrictions, I don't deal with any decals that are not in a kit box, although I've got probably 8,000 to 10,000 aftermarket decal sheets that have just come with collections that I've been hiding in a corner.
Oh.
And I keep thinking they're going to go away, but it just keeps getting larger.
He's got more than you, Dave.
So
yeah, he may well have more than me.
If anyone wants 8,000 or 10,000 microscale decal sheets, let me know.
Don't do that. Don't do that to me. Seriously, don't do that to me.
You don't have enough, Dave.
I have 550 decal sheets.
Listen to the decal sheets.
Yes, yeah.
They're calling you.
Yeah, you're a bad man.
Well, Alan, this has been fun. In closing, I want to give you an opportunity to plug your business in your own words and tell people how to get in touch with you if they got a big pile of kits they want to get rid of.
Well, the website is oldmodelkits.com. There's no spaces, dashes, or anything like that. It's just oldmodelkitsruntogether.com. If you do have any kits or collections for sale, I'd appreciate hearing from you. There is a link on the website where you can contact me, or you can just email me directly at oldmodels@yahoo.com. And again, Old Models is just run together, no spaces, no underline or anything like that. And of course, the website obviously sells kits too. That's how I put food on the table.
We appreciate you one more time for taking time out to talk about this subject with us.
Well, thank you for having me. It was great fun. I appreciate it.
Well, guys, I'm going to need an old Matchbox kit to bring this full circle. I need their F9F4 for the Model Geeks group build. So I'm going to kill two birds with one stone with that one. And I think Alan's got that kit in his current catalog. So
I don't think I have one of those. Otherwise, I would send it to you.
Oh man, I can't wait for you to get that kit and open it up and look at it, and then we'll talk some more.
Yeah, there we go.
It's going to be blue and gray, and it's going to have solid wings and horizontal stabilizers.
No, it's not going to be blue and gray. It's going to be overall blue.
The kit may be two-tone, though.
Oh, well, yeah, you're right. That being a Matchbox, as far as we know, it could be pink and white. I mean,
it could be.
The cool part about that one is it has folding wings. The Panther, yeah, I remember that. I had one of those. That was one of the kits I rebought as an adult, and I think I gave it to somebody I didn't like.
I'm sure it's got sink marks all over it.
Yeah. By the way, that's another thing. I can't remember that I have to pick my laundry up Tuesday at the dry cleaner, but I can remember the details of kits that I built as a teenager that I haven't even seen the sprues in 40 years. It's amazing what gets embedded in your memories.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, we've also talked to somebody at the IPMS National Convention in Omaha who's seen some molds that nobody's seen since we were teens or earlier.
Yes.
Peter Vetri from Atlantis Models. I recorded this, Dave, while you were away from the table. I actually took the equipment over to his booth because he couldn't get away, and we chatted for a few minutes. Now, Atlantis is, man, they're shoulder deep in nostalgia.
Yes.
Nothing in their lineup is new as far as tooling goes.
Right.
And it's a whole business based on nostalgia. So let's see what Peter had to say at the National Convention in Omaha. Well, I'm with Peter Vetri of Atlantis Models, and we talked at Las Vegas a year ago, and I just thought I'd come by and get caught up with you, Peter. How's it been going?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks for coming by. The show has been great. A lot of positive feedback. People, the biggest thing we get is, I remember building this kit when I was a kid with my dad, and it brings back those nice memories, great memories. So that's really been really nice to hear from so many different people.
Well, what have you guys been up to since Las Vegas? I see the Atlantis kit releases come across every now and then.
Yeah, so I bet at Las Vegas now we probably had about 45 kits, active SKUs in the line. I think now we are over 70.
Oh, wow.
So we've been really busy, which
There's a lot.
Quite frankly, yeah, it's a lot. I like to keep it to like between 20 and 30 new releases a year, and here we are just about a little more than halfway through the year. We already came out with 26.
Oh, wow.
So, but it takes up a lot of room and, in the warehouse. So we'd like to, but we had an issue last year. One of the things since the show that really developed was getting the boxes printed.
Oh, yeah.
Getting the board for the boxes. There was some supply chain issue. And so when we had a chance to make them, we did make a lot. And that kind of threw us off a little bit. But I guess you got to get it when you can get it. But now it seems to corrected itself out, that box issue.
Give me an example of some of the stuff that's come out since Las Vegas. Is there any? I've seen some dragsters down here. Were those?
Yeah, the
those available before?
Fireball.
Those new?
No, the Fireball dragster's new. I think the Moon Eyes has come out. The Tom Daniel Troublemaker, the '57 Chevy, the Jungle Jim Camaro Funny Car.
I want to think that the Snoopy.
Yep,
the Red Baron for sure.
Yeah, the
Isn't
Snoopy.
that new this last year?
No, I think we had the Red Baron and the Sop with Camel, but now we have the Snoopy Joe Cool Surfing and Snoopy in his race car. So those are the two new Snoopy ones. Yeah, we had a couple of new ships, some new planes. What else? We did announce about 20 new kits that are coming.
Okay.
But that will probably be more early 2023.
Okay, so a few more months out, 6 months or so.
All kinds of stuff. 4 planes, a lighthouse. We got this year. We'll definitely have the big Jungle Gym 1/16th funny car coming.
Oh, wow.
That should be the end of
Now,
August.
who
early
kitted
September.
that originally?
Ravel.
Okay.
Yeah, Ravel did the 1/16 dragsters, and then we have the monogram originally did. We have the 4 Snap Tom Daniel funny cars.
Oh, wow.
Which is the Whiplash, the Fake Out, the Rip Off, and the Fiend. Those are the names on the cars, and for those we did all new artwork and all new decals by Tom Daniel's son Kelly, who's really he's a great artist. So we've been working with
That's
him
exciting.
a lot.
Things been going well for the company?
Everything's
I
been
guess
going
if you have
well.
that many releases, sure, certainly.
Yeah, that's it. The market is driven by new products. So, but we've
Now,
been.
are you guys still clawing through a back catalog of old tooling?
Oh yeah, that will never end. That will never end. There's a lot there to go through. So, but it's time-consuming work, careful work, dangerous work. So
yes, I'm sure. I've worked around injection mold tooling before, and it's big, heavy stuff.
There's a lot. We're always on the hunt for more. Always on the hunt for
Have
more.
you found any Easter eggs in all the tool acquisitions? Maybe you don't want to tell me right now. But
Nothing I really want to tell, but there's been some surprises, some good, some bad. But
Russ never sleeps, so
like
I'm sure the
something
bad
like
is.
the Nike missile. I don't know if I mentioned this to you last year. I forgot, so forgive me if I'm repeating it. But when we opened up that tool, it was missing the feet, the base. We couldn't figure. Just that one cavity was just taken out.
Okay,
So we had to make. That was
a new cavity.
$3,800 correction. Yeah. So we did it. But if anyone knows, just so you know, when you see the base on the Nike, the feet, those are new tools. They're not the original, but they look just like them. Yeah, but everything's been going good, and we're working hard, and lots of good kits coming out, and always trying to find new venues and retailers to offer plastic model kits in the physical world.
That's right.
You want to go online, you find them, but you're walking down a lot of streets, you don't see hobby shops, you don't see some of the major stores don't carry them. So
I think I've seen a lot of this in Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, Hobby Lobby is probably one of the few big chain stores that still has a good dedicated aisle to models. But beyond that, there's not much. So to me, that's a problem. So we're always trying to figure out what we can do. And a lot of times it's a problem because not because the stuff won't sell in the store, because it will. Excuse me. It's because the buyers in these stores don't know enough
Don't
about
know modeling.
That's
don't
right.
know the hobby.
That's right.
That's
So
interesting.
they have to be educated. So we have to
it's-
figure out a way to do that.
Some of this great box art on these vintage kits.
Yeah.
I'm sure that helps sell it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in the nostalgia business.
That's right.
That's right. So
Well, cool.
yeah.
You talked a little bit last year about possibly some completely new tooling.
We have, we've been making new tooling to make older tooling better.
Okay.
Where there's some kits we just did the glass for the 56 Cadillac, which is coming out.
Okay.
So that never had glass in it. And
now it does.
we can't put a car out without glass in it. It just doesn't
kinda
make
silly,
sense.
right?
So things like that we've been doing.
Okay.
But we have been talking about some completely new tooling of subjects that have never been done before.
Okay.
That's what we want to
Well, that'd be
do.
exciting to have something coming new from somebody else.
Hopefully next time we talk, I'll have really something concrete, yeah. But that should be definitely happening for sure.
All right. Well, Peter, I won't keep you too long, and everybody's going to be packing up here.
Yeah, it was a good show, and, we had a great time, and thanks a lot. I appreciate you stopping by the booth.
All right. Thanks, Peter.
Take care.
Take it easy. Well, guys, everything old is new again, they say. I don't know about some of these kits, but is there any closing comments on nostalgia and scale modeling you want to make?
I think it's a great motivator. If different people build for different reasons, and if this brings joy to you to get an older kit or even to build it, I think that's great. And anything that gets people modeling. So to me, even though, again, for me, life's too short to build old kits, I understand the attraction. If it works for you, great.
Jim?
Well, the idea I've always run across is kind of what I want to do is go back and build like Dooley Bird, the Mustang from the Matchbox box art, or I want to build the Corsair with the green bands. But I'm going to take modern kits. So my thought has always been try to find modern kits of each of these and build them as the box art And that would be my nostalgia build.
Well, that's one angle that'll get you an easier build, probably, for sure.
There you go.
Well, for me, I've got a couple on my hit list. I've accumulated several of old Airfix kits that I always wanted but never got. Mostly they're 72nd scale patrol boats. I've got all three of those now. I've got their 32nd scale M3 Lee, and I've got Monty's Humber in 32nd scale, or his staff car.
I've got that as well. Yep.
I've got a pretty good stack. There's one kit. It's of Airfix origin. It's one of Dave's Love profile series. It's their A7 Corsair.
Yep.
I started that as a kid and ended up bending the thing. So that one is on my list to buy again and have another go at with adult Mike modeling skills.
Do know that Fujimi makes very nice A7 kits in 72nd scale.
It's not a matter of wanting a nice A7 model.
Okay. I just wanted to tell you.
It's a matter of finishing that one I started and failed at.
Gotcha.
The problem I've got is Airfix is reissuing their 124 scale Harrier. And I always wanted that as a kid. And that is something that I could see myself buying and never building, because there's no way, even today, my skills could do that kit justice.
Oh, that is not an easy kit.
Nope.
All right. We'll save that one for another time, Jim. Well, that pretty much wraps up the nostalgia, I think. So let's get on down the road.
You got it.
Inside the Armour is a specialist publisher of scale modelling books. Recently, the latest book I've published is Modelling AFV Club Armour. Despite the title, it's a general guide to modelling armour, with artists such as David Parker of AFV Modeler, David Chow, Ken Abrams, Jose Brito, Mark Neville, and myself, covering M113s to Centurions to Churchills and more. It's your perfect guide to modelling your armour to the highest standards, including build, paint, weather, and presentation. Other titles include Perfect Pits, our guide to getting the most out of your scale model cockpits, a highly popular book that's nearly sold out, so get them while you can. We also stock a range of products which I've discovered and loved and decided to sell because they're so good, including Nichiban masking tape, Tetra Model PE, Seals Models ships, Yamashita Hobby ships, and Wingsy kits. New to us, 148th Aircraft from Wingsy of Ukraine. We're doing our best to support the company at this difficult time, and it's not difficult when there's such fantastic kits. So head on over to InsideTheArmour.com to see what we have that you might want to pick up right now.
So, guys, we're getting to the end of the episode. I'm assuming that modeling fluid has been consumed. Let me start first by saying, again, I'm not a rye guy. I much prefer bourbons to ryes. I tend to find ryes a little too, for want of a better word, spicy, but that's probably not the right descriptor. But boy, this Templeton 4-year, very, very nice. I mean, you put an ice ball in it and it melts beautifully. 80 proof. It's not overly hot. It doesn't have a lot of the flavor notes that a bourbon has, but by the same token, it was very, very drinkable and was enjoyable throughout this episode. So I can give the Templeton 4-year rye a thumbs up. How about you, Mike?
The High West Double Rye. It's a rye blend, 92 proof from Park City, Utah. If you gave us this, please let me know. Concur what Dave has to say about the spice notes. That's without a doubt. It's almost like cinnamon, but not quite. Not quite that much spice, but enough to give you that kind of sensation on the palate. This one's it's a double. It's good. It's drinkable. It must have been, because we actually opened this in the Mojo Dojo in Omaha, but now it's absolutely 100% gone. So obviously drinkable by me anyway.
Yes, we're working our way through these.
That's right. Yeah, I would have this again. But like Dave, a rye is spicy. You know, I like Bullet bourbon, which has as much rye in it as you can have in a bourbon and still call it a bourbon.
Right.
And that's about my limit.
Yeah.
I think it has more flavor than this, but this is a lot different. If you're looking for something different, High West Double Rye, go for it. It's in a nice, tall, thin, embossed glass bottle. They got nice packaging. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
So, Jim, how was the tea?
Hey, it's Emperor Cloud green tea from Starbucks. It's always good for me. But now you guys did make me flash back to my college years of Long Island iced tea. I'm not sure as a 50-year-old man you should be drinking that, but I remember those being damn good.
Did you find yourself more relaxed and at peace with the universe?
I am so zen right now, man. You got no idea, eh?
So, guys, do we have any shout-outs for the end of the episode?
Well, I'll start. We need to shout out a couple of Patreon contributors. Paul Gallagher and Henry Himerde have both joined the ranks of our contributors through Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, and if you've thought about doing that, to consider doing it now, you can make a recurring contribution through Patreon at www.patreon.com/plasticmodelmojo. You can contribute anything from $1 on up, and it will bill you monthly for that, and keep the recurrence coming. You can contribute through PayPal by going to our website, www.plasticmodelmojo.com. There you will find a heart icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. You can click that. It'll take you to PayPal, and you can make a one-time contribution or manage your own recurring contribution there. And it's all very much appreciated. It really has gone a long way to help us improve the show and to keep things current and to keep us moving forward. So thank you very much.
Jim, you have a shout-out?
I've actually got two, if that's okay. As I said earlier, I screwed up Friday night and forgot to even think about reserving a hotel. And I mentioned, I think it might have been in the dojo, and Bruce Worrell from Kingston, Ontario, reached out and said I can sleep on his couch if he wants. So that was kind of cool. Bruce is somebody, he's, I think, Canadian Army, and we had met him for the first time at the Nats in Omaha.
He's Evan's minder.
Yes, he was Evans. What do they call that when you're young and they put you on an airplane? He was Evans' escort.
Or body man.
Yeah, there you go. And the other one was the other night I was on YouTube and ran across a gentleman in Switzerland who I'm not convinced that he is the Swiss version of a scale Canadian. His name is Chris Vea, and he has a YouTube channel called The Rusty Scale Show. It's kind of insane. It's totally awesome. He has done some true model building, which even I've never done, and put up a couple videos on the Airfix Wildcat. And I was a little shocked because he's only got about 300 subscribers, and I thought he was really funny, and I just want people to check him out. It's kind of the Swiss craziness that you get from me.
Well, my shout out of the month is to our previous guest, Steve Hustad. As you know, Steve was one of my modeling heroes, one of the people whose work I admired, and only through this podcast did I actually get to begin interacting with him. And Steve has been very, very gracious, not only to come on the podcast and to talk about different subjects, and we're going to have him on it again in the future, but he's also been gracious. We've been emailing back and forth. He's been telling me information he had or he found regarding the ICM Sally that ICM is supposed to release in the third quarter of 2022, but just been very generous with his time and with being willing to put up with all the myriad of questions that I have for him. So I do want to shout out Steve and thank him for being on the last episode and tell him we're looking forward to him coming back in the future.
All right. Anything else?
Can I do one more?
Oh, you got another one?
Yeah, I just, as every time I come on, I want to thank you guys for having me and thank you for doing this. The Mojo is awesome. The dojo's awesome. And thank you. And I also want to say, if you have heard stories about the FBI raiding the dojo in Omaha, it's 100% true. I was there. There were like 50 guys in FBI sweaters, and I swear they were carting Dave off, but he's back, so I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, I ended up in a black site, and I had to escape with the help of some ninjas.
You didn't have Snake Plissken helping you out?
No, they had Australian accents though.
Snake Plissken, I thought he was dead.
Very good.
Thank you. Mike, I think we've reached the end of the episode.
We've reached the end, Dave, for sure. As we always say, so many kits.
So little time.
All right, guys. You have a good night.
You too.
See you later.